In the heart of Sao Paulo's overcrowded public hospital, where the air is thick with desperation and whispered prayers, a chance encounter will bind three women in ways they never imagined. Dona Amelia Costa, a resilient but fragile 75-year-old seamstress, arrives at the hospital burdened by years of quiet sacrifice and the weight of an undiagnosed pain that could cost her everything. Dismissed as insignificant by the overworked and emotionally distant Dr. Helena Ribeiro, Amelia's suffering becomes the catalyst for a journey none of them could have foreseen. Helena, a celebrated physician whose compassion has withered under the pressures of a crumbling healthcare system, must confront the ghosts of her past, the sister she couldn't save and the passion for medicine that has been buried beneath layers of cynicism. But when Sophia, Amelia's fiercely protective daughter, discovers a long-forgotten necklace inscribed with the initials of Helena's late sister, the lines between past and present blur, revealing a shared history that could either heal or shatter them all. As secrets unravel and tensions rise, the three women are forced to choose: cling to their pain or embrace the power of forgiveness. In a world that often overlooks the broken, Threads of Remembrance is a poignant exploration of the ties that bind us, the wounds we carry, and the second chances that can transform our lives. Discover a story where love, loss, and the resilience of the human spirit remind us that even in the darkest hours, hope can light the way. The rain poured down in relentless sheets as Dona Amelia Costa stepped into the bustling public hospital in Sao Paulo. She winced, clutching her abdomen as another wave of pain washed over her. The waiting room was chaos, an endless sea of weary, anxious faces. Amelia took a shaky breath and scanned the room for a place to sit. Finally spotting a vacant, worn-out chair near the window, she slowly lowered herself, every movement a silent cry for relief. "I hope it won't be long," she whispered, her voice fragile as a thread. Beside her, a young mother bounced a crying baby on her hip, looking just as exhausted. Amelia closed her eyes, praying the pain would ease. But deep down, she feared she was just another invisible soul in a place where suffering was routine. Dr. Helena Ribeiro strode into the emergency room, her heels echoing in the hallway. Dark circles shadowed her sharp brown eyes, and her hair was pulled back into a no-nonsense bun. As she scanned the patient charts, a nurse approached. "Dr. Helena," the nurse said, gesturing toward Amelia, "this woman's been waiting for hours. She's in a lot of pain." Helena sighed, rubbing her temples. "Fine, I'll take a look." She approached Amelia, her voice clipped. "What seems to be the problem?" Amelia's voice trembled. "It's my stomach, doctor. It's been hurting for months, but today it's worse." Helena's eyes remained fixed on her tablet. "Age-related issues, likely. I'll prescribe something for the pain." She typed quickly, not looking at Amelia. "Take this and rest." But Amelia began, only to have Helena cut her off. "Next patient," Helena called, already moving on. Amelia swallowed her protest, clutching the paper prescription in defeat. Back in the waiting room, Amelia obediently swallowed the pills she'd been given. She hoped for relief, but instead, the pain sharpened. Her hands shook, and her vision blurred. The mother beside her noticed her paling face. "Senora, are you all right?" she asked, worry in her eyes. Amelia tried to respond, but the words wouldn't come. She slumped forward, gasping as the world spun. A security guard, noticing the commotion, rushed over. "Someone get a doctor," he shouted. The crowd's murmur intensified, a ripple of fear spreading through the room. Amelia's frail body shook as the pain consumed her. Dr. Vinicius Almeida, a young, empathetic physician, burst into the waiting area. His eyes widened at the sight of Amelia, barely conscious. "We need a stretcher here," he commanded. Kneeling beside her, he checked her pulse. "What medication did she take?" he asked the nurse who brought him the chart. As he read Helena's prescription, his jaw tightened. This medication shouldn't have been given to someone with her symptoms. Vinicius's voice was calm but firm. "Get her into a treatment room now. We need tests, fast." He glanced back at the crowd, spotting Helena observing from the hallway. Their eyes met, and an unspoken challenge passed between them. Sophia Costa rushed into the hospital, her heart pounding. A nurse had called, saying her mother was in critical condition. Tears burned her eyes as she spotted Amelia being wheeled into the emergency room. May, Sophia called, running to catch up. Her voice cracked with fear. She turned to the nearest doctor, Helena. What happened to her? Why wasn't she helped sooner? Helena struggled to maintain her composure. We're doing everything we can. Everything you can? Sophia's voice rose, filled with desperation and anger. My mother almost died waiting here. How could you let this happen? Helena's facade cracked, and guilt flooded her expression. But before she could respond, Vinicius stepped forward. We're treating her now. Let me help. Sophia's eyes filled with rage and tears. You'd better, she whispered, her voice trembling. The confrontation had begun, and it was clear this was only the beginning. Sophia stormed down the hallway, her steps echoing with barely contained rage. She spotted Dr. Helena, who was standing stiffly, eyes darting between patients and the staff. Taking a breath to steady her voice, Sophia approached. Dr. Helena, she called, and the doctor turned, bracing herself. Sophia's voice shook. How could you dismiss my mother's pain like that? Do you even care what happens to your patients? Helena's jaw clenched, but her voice was quiet. I made an error, and I deeply regret it. The system is chaotic. Don't you dare blame the system, Sophia interrupted. My mother could have died because you couldn't be bothered to listen. Helena's usual composure crumbled, her eyes shadowed by guilt. I'm sorry, she whispered, but Sophia wasn't ready to accept an apology. The confrontation left both women reeling, the air thick with tension. In the emergency room, Dr. Vinicius worked swiftly, issuing orders to the team. Amelia lay on the stretcher, pale and trembling. Sophia clung to her mother's hand, whispering words of reassurance. Hang in there, May, Sophia murmured, trying to be strong. Vinicius glanced over, his face set with determination. We're doing everything we can, he said, his voice gentle yet firm. He turned back to the monitors, reading the critical signs. The tests were coming back, and the results were dire. She needs surgery, now, he informed the team. As Amelia was prepped, Sophia felt her world tilting. The reality that she could lose her mother was too much to bear, and the sight of Vinicius's compassionate care only emphasized the coldness she'd felt from Helena. Helena stood alone in the doctor's lounge, staring blankly at her trembling hands. Memories she tried to bury flooded back. Her sister Bianca, frail and sick, the helplessness she'd felt as a child. Helena pressed a hand to her chest, struggling to breathe. I'm failing, she whispered, her voice cracking. She remembered the promise she'd made to become a doctor, to save lives where she once felt powerless. But somewhere along the way, the weight of the broken healthcare system had hardened her heart. A colleague entered, breaking her thoughts. You all right? They asked, concern in their eyes. Helena mustered a nod, but inside, she knew she had reached a breaking point. She couldn't keep hiding from her guilt. In a quiet hallway, Vinicius pulled Sophia aside. Exhaustion and empathy etched into his features. I need you to understand something, he began. Your mother's condition was made worse by the medication Dr. Helena prescribed. It was a mistake, but one with serious consequences. Sophia clenched her fists, anger flaring. So, it's true. She really did this. Vinicius nodded, his gaze steady. Yes, but I don't think it was out of malice. This place breaks people, Sophia. It's complicated. Sophia's eyes burned with unshed tears. Complicated or not, she hurt my mother. There has to be accountability. Vinicius placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. Do what you must, but remember, healing can come in many forms. His words planted a seed of doubt in Sophia's heart, but her resolve remained fierce. As Sophia waited for news about the surgery, she noticed a delicate necklace around her mother's neck. The pendant slipped loose, and she caught it, turning it over in her hand. Her breath caught when she saw the initials. BN. A wave of childhood memories washed over her. Stories her mother told of working for a wealthy family, caring for a sick little girl named Bianca. Sophia's heart raced. Could this necklace connect her mother to Dr. Helena in some way? Clutching the pendant, Sophia's determination grew. There was a deeper story here, one that needed to be uncovered. And whatever the truth was, she wouldn't rest until she found it. The surgical lights reflected off Vinicius's sweat-drenched brow as he worked intently to save Amelia. Helena stood just outside the operating room, her face pale and stricken. Every second felt like an eternity. As the doors swung shut, Helena whispered to herself, "Please let her make it. I can't bear another loss." Inside, Vinicius's calm voice guided his team. "We're almost there. Focus." His hands moved with practiced precision, but the tension in the room was palpable. Outside, Helena's knuckles whitened as she gripped the observation railing. For the first time in years, she silently prayed. While waiting, Helena sank into a chair in the doctor's lounge, her mind swirling. She closed her eyes, and a memory surfaced. She was 8 years old, watching helplessly as Bianca, her younger sister, struggled to breathe. A kind nanny, with gray curls and warm hands, held Bianca close, singing a lullaby to soothe her. Helena's eyes flew open, heart pounding. "Amelia," she whispered, recognizing the woman from her past. Guilt and recognition washed over her. The realization was staggering. The patient she had neglected had once comforted the sister she had loved and lost. At home, Sophia rummaged through old boxes in her mother's bedroom, desperate for answers. She found a faded photograph of Amelia with 2 young girls, one with Helena's familiar dark hair. Tears welled in Sophia's eyes as she traced the photo with her finger. Her phone buzzed, a message from Vinicius. "Your mother's stable, but it was close. Come back when you can." Sophia's hands trembled. Clutching the photograph, she vowed, "I will get to the bottom of this." Sophia stormed into the hospital, the photograph clutched in her hand. Vinicius led her to a small conference room where Helena was waiting. The room crackled with tension. "Explain this," Sophia demanded, thrusting the photo at Helena. Helena's hands shook as she examined the image. "Bianca," she whispered, tears pooling in her eyes. "Your mother was the one who cared for her." Sophia's eyes narrowed. "And you almost killed her in return?" Helena's voice cracked. "I failed both of you. I lost sight of why I became a doctor." Her remorse was raw, but Sophia wasn't ready to forgive. The past they shared felt too tangled, too painful. Amelia stirred, her eyes fluttering open. She saw Sophia and Helena standing at her bedside, their faces etched with pain and confusion. "What's going on?" she asked weakly. Sophia squeezed her mother's hand. "We found out something, May. About Bianca. About Helena." Amelia's gaze softened as she remembered. "Ah, Bianca. Sweet child," she murmured. Her eyes met Helena's. "I never forgot her, or the way she smiled." Helena's tears fell freely. "I'm so sorry," she choked out. Amelia managed a faint smile, her voice like a whisper. "We are all broken, in different ways." The room filled with a fragile, hopeful silence, as if healing had just begun. Amelia's frail voice broke the tense silence in the hospital room. "Bianca, she was such a delicate child. I cared for her like my own." Her gaze drifted toward Helena, who stood motionless, tears streaming down her face. You were that other little girl," Amelia whispered, the realization settling in. Helena stepped forward, her voice barely a whisper. "I didn't remember until now. You sang to her when she was afraid. I always hid behind the door, too scared to lose her." Sophia, clutching her mother's hand, took in the confession, her anger momentarily softened. "Why did you become so cold, Helena?" she demanded. Helena swallowed hard, her guilt palpable. "I lost Bianca, and I buried my pain beneath work. But I've done more harm than I ever intended. I'm sorry, Donna Amelia. Truly." The raw truth hung heavy in the room, and for the first time, a path toward understanding opened. Helena found herself in the doctor's lounge, facing Sophia once again. "I owe you both so much more than an apology," she said, her voice cracking. "I've let the pressure turn me into someone I never wanted to be. But that doesn't excuse what I did." Sophia's jaw tightened. "You almost cost my mother her life, Helena. An apology doesn't change that." Helena nodded, eyes full of remorse. "You're right. But I want to be better. For Bianca's memory, for your mother, and for myself. I'll advocate for change here, so no one else suffers like she did. Sophia's expression was unreadable, but a flicker of compassion passed through her eyes. Words mean nothing without action, she warned. Helena agreed. I'm ready to prove it, she promised, knowing the road to redemption would be long. Sophia paced outside her mother's room, her mind racing. Vinicius approached, his warm eyes full of concern. Sophia, he said gently, I know it's tempting to pursue justice through legal means, but think about what your mother would want. Sophia stopped, her hands clenched into fists. She would want to forgive, I know, she admitted. But how do I let go of the anger? How do I trust that things will change? Vinicius sighed. Healing takes time, and sometimes forgiveness is the most powerful form of justice. He placed a hand on her shoulder. Do what feels right in your heart. Sophia's eyes softened, and for the first time in days, a semblance of clarity surfaced. I need to talk to my mother, she whispered, feeling the weight of her decision pressing down on her. Helena and Vinicius worked together to treat a critical patient in the emergency room. The chaos was relentless, the beeping of monitors and cries of pain a constant backdrop. Helena's newfound empathy drove her actions, and she took a moment to comfort the patient's family. Vinicius watched, a small smile breaking through his exhaustion. Looks like you're finding your way back, he murmured to Helena. Helena met his gaze, determination shining through. I have a lot to make up for. Starting now. The hospital was still overwhelmed, but Helena's change in demeanor gave hope that things could be different. The scene served as a reminder of the systemic challenges they all faced, and the need for people like Helena to stand up for change. Back in her mother's room, Sophia sat by Amelia's bedside, tears glistening in her eyes. May, Helena wants to make amends, she said, her voice trembling. Do you think we can forgive her? Amelia's hand covered Sophia's, her touch gentle. Forgiveness doesn't erase the past, but it can heal the heart, she murmured. Helena lost someone too. We're all just trying to find our way. Sophia's heart ached at her mother's wisdom. I'm so proud of you, May, she whispered, leaning in to embrace her. Amelia's eyes shone with love and pride. We're stronger together, Minha Filha. The room was filled with an unspoken promise, a commitment to move forward, even if the journey was fraught with pain and hope intertwined. Amelia lay in her hospital bed, her body slowly mending but her spirit resilient as ever. Sophia hovered nearby, adjusting her mother's blanket and brushing away a stray tear. May, you're getting stronger, Sophia said, forcing a hopeful smile. Amelia chuckled softly. I have to be. I still need to keep you in line. The two shared a quiet laugh, a rare moment of levity. But beneath the surface, both women knew the scars from their ordeal ran deep. Amelia reached out, her fingers curling around Sophia's hand. It's time to let go of the anger, Filha. Healing is more important. Sophia swallowed, her throat tight. I'm trying, May. I really am. Yet, the ache of wanting to protect her mother still burned brightly. Helena stood in front of the hospital staff, her hands shaking slightly as she gripped her notes. Our patients deserve better. We deserve better, she began, her voice firm. I've made mistakes, but I won't let the system break me any longer. We need to advocate for change. Together, murmurs rippled through the crowd, a mix of skepticism and hope. Vinicius watched from the sidelines, a glimmer of pride in his eyes. You think this will make a difference? A nurse asked, arms crossed. Helena took a steadying breath. I have to believe it will. Because every life matters. The room fell silent, and slowly, heads began to nod. Her commitment was clear, but she knew words would mean nothing without follow-through. Sophia sat across from a lawyer, her fingers tapping anxiously against the table. Taking legal action could hold her accountable, the lawyer said, his tone professional. But it won't guarantee systemic change. Sophia frowned, conflicted. Vinicius's words echoed in her mind. Healing can come in many forms. Closing her eyes, she imagined the toll a drawn-out fight would take on Amelia. What would my mother really want? She asked herself. Finally, she stood, her decision made. I'm not sure if revenge is what we need, she said, voice steady. Maybe there's another way to make this right. The lawyer looked surprised but nodded. Sophia walked out, feeling a sense of relief mixed with uncertainty. Helena entered Amelia's room, carrying a bouquet of fresh lavender. I don't expect you to forgive me, she began, her voice thick with emotion. But I needed to tell you how much I admire your strength, and how sorry I am for causing you pain. Amelia studied her, the weight of their shared past heavy in the room. You've carried your own burdens, Helena, she replied softly. But it's never too late to change. Tears filled Helena's eyes. Thank you, she whispered, for everything you did for Bianca, and for giving me a chance to make amends. Amelia reached out, and they shared a gentle moment of understanding, a bridge built over years of loss. Sophia, Vinicius, and Helena stood together in front of the hospital, where volunteers were organizing a community fundraiser. This is just the beginning, Helena said, her voice full of newfound hope. Sophia glanced at her mother, who was watching from a nearby bench, a serene smile on her face. Maybe we can do some good after all, Sophia admitted, offering Helena a small but genuine smile. Vinicius placed a reassuring hand on her back. Together we will. The morning sun bathed them in warm light, a sign of the hope that lay ahead. They had faced pain, loss, and anger, but now they were ready to fight for change, together. The morning sun cast golden light over the hospital courtyard, where a fundraiser had transformed the once gray space into a haven of hope. Tables lined with homemade crafts and baked goods stretched in every direction. Sophia pushed Amelia's wheelchair toward a booth. Look at everyone, May, she said, her voice warm with admiration. Amelia beamed. It's beautiful, Sophia. People coming together. That's the real medicine. Helena joined them, a humble smile on her lips. Thank you both for being here, she said. I'm trying to make this place better, step by step. Sophia glanced at Helena. The tension between them softened. We're all trying, she replied, and for the first time, it felt genuine. The sense of unity among the crowd was contagious, a reminder of the power of community. Helena stood before her team of young doctors, her presence no longer one of cold authority but of quiet compassion. We're here to heal, not just to treat, she said, her voice steady. Efficiency matters, but empathy saves lives too. A young intern raised a hand. Dr. Ribeiro, how do we balance both? Helena's lips curved into a thoughtful smile. By never forgetting that every patient is someone's loved one, she answered. We listen first. Vinicius observed from the doorway, a soft pride in his eyes. He approached Helena afterward. You've really changed, he remarked. Helena nodded, determination burning bright. I had to. For Bianca. For Amelia. For everyone we're here to help. Later, Vinicius found Sophia by the hospital garden, where the flowers were beginning to bloom. It's peaceful here, she said, her voice lighter than it had been in weeks. He smiled. You deserve peace. You've been through so much. Sophia's gaze turned to him, her green eyes soft. Thank you for being there for my mother. And for me? Vinicius took a breath, the warmth between them unmistakable. I hope this isn't goodbye. Sophia chuckled. Not goodbye. Maybe a new beginning? Their shared laughter filled the garden, a promise of something more, something hopeful and new. In Amelia's hospital room, she presented Helena with a quilt sheet made from scraps of old fabric. Each piece was sewn with love, vibrant patterns of Bianca's favorite colors. Helena held it to her chest, tears brimming. I made this for memories, Amelia said, her voice gentle. For Bianca and for you. Helena's heart swelled. This is the most precious gift I've ever received, she whispered, her fingers tracing the stitches. Thank you. Amelia smiled. We all need warmth, Helena. Even doctors. The room felt brighter, as if love itself had woven through every seam. The sun rose higher over Sao Paulo, casting warmth on the hospital. Sophia, Amelia, and Helena stood together, the city alive with possibility. We have a long road ahead, Sophia said, but there was no bitterness, only hope. Helena nodded. We do. But we're not alone. Amelia looked at both women, her heart full. Together, "We're stronger," she declared. They watched the city come alive, their pasts intertwined and their future bound by forgiveness and the promise of change. The story ended not with a grand finale, but with the quiet certainty that healing, like the sun, always rises anew.